News Corp columnist Angela Mollard and royal expert Richard Palmer. Richard, welcome to the show. It's all been happening in the UK this week. Can you please run our viewers through the process for calling a general election and the part the royal family plays in that process?
Yes, thanks for the invitation. The King has a role to play in that the Prime Minister has to formally ask his permission to dissolve Parliament. And constitutional experts, I think, disagree sometimes about whether the King could actually say no. I think in theory he could if he thought that there was an alternative. Perhaps somebody else could be Prime Minister, or there was an alternative. But clearly, an election was going to have to happen at some point this year. So, in this case, Rishi Sunak went to Buckingham Palace, asked for formal permission to dissolve Parliament, was granted that, and then the other part of the process is the Privy Council, a group of senior ministers and advisors, has to meet to approve the issuing of a proclamation by the King calling the general election, essentially. So that Privy Council also met on Wednesday afternoon. So it's all systems go for a general election.
And Angela, you've been in the UK for a general election and the royal family has historically stayed politically neutral. Do we expect that continue and do they even vote?
Look, they are, Caroline, legally allowed to vote. There's nothing stopping them voting, but they don't because it would be seen to be potentially subject to bias, and they have to, constitutionally, they have to remain impartial. So they don't vote. They also, one of the main reasons that they stay out of the news cycle, for instance, Rishi Sunak has now announced this military, compulsory, mandatory military or community policy. Now, obviously, Charles and William have both been members of the military. They do a lot of military events. They have military patronages. If they were seen at lots of military events over the next month, that would be a sort of indication, a nod towards their potentially favouring such a policy. So they have to remain completely neutral throughout this time. So as we've seen, they are pulling out of events just so that they don't distract from the election or pull attention away from it.
And Richard, just on what Angela has to say, you know, that those royal events are going to be cancelled. A number of them will be cancelled. June is typically their busiest month. And it seems like just as everything was getting back to some kind of semblance of normalcy, this here seems like quite a large impact. Is that the case?
Well, absolutely. I think it's very frustrating for the royal household, for the royal family, but that's democracy. It was always going to happen at some point. I think most political experts and I suspect courtiers were thinking that an autumn election was more likely, and so this has caught everybody on the hop. And I've been speaking to people in the last few days that they've just been in endless meetings rearranging official engagements, either cancelling them or reformatting them. So it's caused some chaos. And I think it's frustrating because the King and William in particular, were just getting the royal show back on the road again after 4 months where really, the number of royal engagements has fallen to pandemic levels because there just haven't been people around because the King's been off. Kate's been off. William's been off looking after his family while Kate's been having cancer treatment, and things were just starting to get back to not exactly normal, but getting towards it. We were told that there's cautious optimism now about the King's health. Can't be 100% sure, but the fact that he's been out meeting lots of people suggests that he's responding well to treatment, certainly the mood music coming out of the palace. And now suddenly everything comes to if not a grinding halt, they're going to have to really dial it down. I would say that the one positive thing about this is that it does clear the way for a royal visit to Australia later in the year. I suspect that probably would have gone ahead anyway, but there would have been this problem if the King had been coming to Australia in October and we were in the run-up to a general election here. If he was taking too much attention away from the politicians in the UK, then there might have been an argument that perhaps it wasn't the right time to come. But that at least is one bit of good news for Australian monarchists, I'd say. Apart from that, I think there will be things that the royal family go out on: trooping the colour, royal ascot. Probably, the royal presence at those events will probably still go ahead. There's a bit of uncertainty about trooping the colour because it's a government celebration of the monarchy, but I suspect that will go ahead. But one thing I think is really interesting is that under this new reign, I think we've seen a more muscular type of monarchy. Charles and the rest of his family do try to avoid party political controversy, but it is a more campaigning institution perhaps than it was before. And so when you are campaigning to reduce food wastage and talking about food banks, when you are saying that children under 5 in the UK need a better start in life, when you are saying you want to end homelessness, whilst you're not criticising individual politicians, it does mean that you're prompting questions for politicians. What are the politicians going to do about it? So I think we're probably going to have to see dialing all of that down.